Hey guys, and welcome back to the briefing room. So, at Wondercon this year, something interesting was implied. Again, I say implied because it wasn't flat out said, but it's interesting and definitely different from what we've been hearing in several years about Robotech. So I thought I'd talk about it, share my opinions on it, and kind of give you a pie-in-the-sky idea for what I personally would like to see. So, at WonderCon they were talking about the live-action movie. And during the live-action movie they said that they had a slide and they were talking about the slide as they were going through. But basically they said that basically they implied that while Andy Muschietti films the sequel to 2017's It, they will be working on developing the project so that when he's done they can move forward with it and start on it. Again, this was not flat out said, but it was implied that they would begin as soon as he's finished. They just simply said that they are currently developing the movie while he films. But that's a lot more than what they've said in recent years. So I did find that interesting and wanted to share that with you. And I just want to say, don't get your hopes up too much. Remember, this is a project 11 years now in the making between two different studios that, quite frankly, aren't doing very well compared to other studios in Hollywood. So, fingers crossed, but let's also be realistic. Projects that stay in pre-production hell usually stay in pre-production hell. But I'd like to share with you my pie-in-the-sky idea for this project. It is well known and well reported that Harmony Gold does not have permission to use Macross, Mecha, or people. And it is well known that they do not have a good relationship with the people that do have the rights to use the mecha and characters. So while it's possible, because Sony is a Japanese company and could have a better relationship with them than Harmony Gold, I still consider that very unlikely. So, my pie-in-the-sky idea is that you start from after Force of Arms. After Force of Arms, it's the Earth dealing with this, with the fallout of what happened in the events of Force of Arms, and you've got you've got the world overall suffering and trying to rebuild. So what you could do is, since the story before that actually is, if you take out the character-specific stuff, the overall arc outside of the characters is generally generic. So you could just have that in like an opening narration or a text crawl like in Star Wars or something like that. You could do something like that where you're explaining the story, you know, without using the stuff you don't have permission to use, and just begin with that area. And then during this time, we know they were developing new types of mecha. Mecha that we might not have seen, mecha that we may have seen in future projects, and they could use those. They could use they could make a version of the F-16, which I would consider the second most romantic fighter plane outside of the F-14, which they can't really use because there's not a whole lot you can do with the F-14 without kind of stepping on those rights you don't have. So do like something like an F-16 and make a version with that. And because we know that they're developing new mecha at the time, it fits. You could use hover tanks, which we know they were developing at the time. Stuff like that. Stuff you are able to use. And then what they could do is there are characters in the other sagas, in the other stories, that we know had a hand during the Zentradi uprisings. Now, I'll get to the Zentradi in a minute. But you have these characters that are established to have had good records during that era, but because they weren't in the Macross anime, which turned into the Macross saga, they don't appear because they were characters in the other sagas, the other animes that were turned into this big sprawling epic. So take some of those characters. Take like Vince Grant and Rolf Emerson. We know they have a good relationship because Grant trusted Emerson with his child when he went off into the expedition. So we know that they had a good relationship. What if their relationship was built during the war? So you have those characters in a time frame that you can play around with. It's a sandbox. That's why Robotech Battlecry, the video game, that's why it takes place mostly in that era, is because you have a larger sandbox to play with. You can do more with it. And then you don't have to worry about all the legalities. You don't have to worry about fans being upset with how you handled their favorite characters because you're showing a story they don't know. And then they're not bored because they don't know this story. It's new to them. It's fresh. Now, again, with the Zentradi, it's going to be hard to do the Zentradi, just in general. We're talking about 40-foot humanoid aliens. That's kind of hard to justify as far as the rights are concerned. They might have to deal with micronized Zentradi. They can't use the name Zentradi. So they'll have to come up with a new name for the Zentradi. But, you know, and they might have to be micronized. They could probably keep the skin color. I don't see that necessarily being an issue. But make them micronized, micronized uprising. You could have, because we didn't see a whole lot of Dolz's fleet, maybe Dolz's fleet did have some new mecha. So you could justify that a little bit as far as the mecha is concerned. But that way you're avoiding a lot of the legalities, and the only issue would be the Zentradi themselves, not necessarily the mecha. Just I doubt they'd be able to do a 50-foot humanoid creature with those skin colors and say, oh no, we're not violating any copyright. They might have to change the Zentradi up a little bit. But if that's all they're changing and everything else, you know, fits, why not? They're not stepping on anyone's toes, you know. And then you're getting these stories that you didn't know, these sprawling epics. I've seen it on the Robotech Twitter and so forth that their plans are for this to be a reboot. So they're probably going to just start from scratch, make their own designs, make a bunch of stuff. They could probably still do this F-16s. That's still a possibility, I would think. But make their own story, make their own thing, so that way they can use in the future they can use Macross characters and mecha in future projects without having to worry about the legalities, because this is a reboot and they're using stuff that they own rather than what's there, which I'm also fine with. It's just I'm not sure how they would handle that. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, my idea was just a pie in the sky moment. We have no idea what's going to happen. Jason, I can't pronounce his last name. I thought it was Fuchs. Apparently it's not. But he's writing the script. He's currently in the process. We have no idea what's going to happen yet, and we probably won't have any idea until 2 or 3 trailers have been released, which might happen, might not happen. Depends. Like I said, it's been in development for 11 years. I don't see that ending anytime soon. So, let me know what you think about my pie in the sky idea. Let me know what you think about whether or not you think these comments might actually mean something. And let's just get a Robotech conversation going, because we all love Robotech, right? So, leave those down below. You can also hit me up on Twitter, on the Briefing Room Facebook page, all that fun stuff. And I will see you guys next time.